A certain Eleanor Marriott was writing, "In the matter of the estate of Mrs. Sarah Ford, deceased." It took me a while to get there. We live with such easy assumptions, don't we? For instance, that memory equals events plus time. But it's all much odder than this. Who was it said that memory is what we thought we'd forgotten? And it ought to be obvious to us that time doesn't act as a fixative, rather as a solvent. But it's not convenient, it's not useful to believe this. It doesn't help us get on with our lives, so we ignore it. I was asked to confirm my address and provide a photocopy of my passport. I was informed that I had been left £500 and 2 documents. I found this very puzzling. For a start, to get a bequest from someone whose Christian name I had either never known or else forgotten. And £500 seemed a very specific sum. Bigger than nothing, not as big as something. Perhaps it would make sense if I knew when Mrs. Ford had made her will. Though, if it had been a long time ago, the equivalent sum now would be quite a bit larger and make even less sense. I confirmed my existence, authenticity, and location, attaching photocopied corroboration. I asked if I might be told the date of the will. Then, one evening, I sat down and tried to resurrect that humiliating weekend in Chislehurst, some 40 years previously. I searched for any moment, incident, or remark which might have seemed worthy of acknowledgement or reward. But my memory has increasingly become a mechanism which reiterates apparently truthful data with little variation. I stared into the past. I waited. I tried to trick my memory into a different course. But it was no good. I was someone who had gone out with the daughter of Mrs. Sarah Ford, deceased, for a period of about a year, who had been patronized by her husband, loftily scrutinized by her son, and manipulated by her daughter. Painful for me at the time, but hardly requiring the subsequent maternal apology of £500. And anyway, that pain hasn't lasted. As I mentioned, I have a certain instinct for self-preservation. I successfully put Veronica out of my mind, out of my history. So when time delivered me all too quickly into middle age, and I began looking back over how my life had unfolded, and considering the paths untaken, those lulling, undermining what-ifs, I never found myself imagining, not even for worse, let alone for better, how things would have been with Veronica. Annie, yes; Veronica, no. And I never regretted my years with Margaret, even if we did divorce. Try as I could, which wasn't very hard, I rarely ended up fantasizing a markedly different line from the one that had been mine. I don't think this is complacency. It's more likely a lack of imagination or ambition or something. I suppose the truth is that, yes, I'm not odd enough not to have done the things I've ended up doing with my life. I didn't read the solicitor's letter immediately. Instead, I looked at the enclosure, a long, creamy envelope with my name on it. Handwriting I'd seen only once in my life before, but nonetheless familiar. Anthony Webster, Esquire. The way the ascenders and descenders finished with a little curlicue took me back to someone I had known for a mere weekend. Someone whose handwriting, in its confidence rather than shape, suggested a woman perhaps odd enough to do things I hadn't. But what they might have been, I couldn't know or guess. There was an inch of sellotape on the front of the envelope, centre top. I was expecting it to run down the back and add an extra seal, but it had been cut off along the envelope's top edge. Presumably, the letter had once been attached to something else. Finally, I opened it and read. Dear Tony, I think it right you should have the attached. Adrian always spoke warmly of you, and perhaps you will find it an interesting, if painful, memento of long ago. I am also leaving you a little money. You may find this strange, and to tell the truth I'm not quite sure of my own motives. In any case, I am sorry for the way my family treated you all those years ago, and wish you well, even from beyond the grave. Yours, Sarah Ford. P.S. It may sound odd, but I think the last months of his life were happy. The solicitor asked for my bank details so that the legacy could be paid direct. She added that she was enclosing the first of the documents I had been left. The second was still in the possession of Mrs. Ford's daughter. That, I realized, would explain the cut piece of sellotape. Mrs. Marriott was currently trying to obtain this second item, and Mrs. Ford's will, in answer to my question, had been drawn up 5 years previously.